Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. On behalf of Cisco IT, we want to thank you for taking the time out of this awesome week as we take you inside Cisco IT's journey to SSE and enabling hybrid work with Cisco Secure Access. So before we get going, we have a lot of content and a tight 60-minute window that we're going to cover. We do have a very diverse crowd, ranging from IT directors, senior architects, network and security operators, and whatnot. So we want to encourage you to download the WebEx app, find our session ID, and leverage that space. Joe and I will be tackling questions there all week long in case we don't get to them at the end of the session. So for the sake of time, what are we all here for? What is the agenda? What are we covering? We'll, of course, do introductions. So Joe and I will talk about who we are, where we came from, and what we're doing here with Cisco IT, right? We'll get into our vision and strategy, what secure access is, why SSE, what the challenges are. And then, of course, we'll get into our journey, how we're tackling the adoption strategy on a tech track basis. We'll deep dive all that from VPN first to mitigating risk around unsanctioned GenAI with the secure web gateway, and of course, migrating applications for zero trust and leveraging another proxy within SSE. Of course, this transition to cloud services takes a lot of effort in terms of operations and management, so we'll show you how Cisco IT is doing all of that. And then lastly, we'll talk about lessons learned. Full disclosure, Joe and I are not in sales or marketing. We are IT engineers, so everything we give you today is strictly from the field. That's not a sales pitch, just being honest. And then, of course, the last part, we'll talk about next steps, and then whatever time is left, we'll do Q&A. So without further ado, I'm Mike Cifelli. I've been at Cisco for a little over 3 years. My primary responsibility has been working alongside this guy and some other talented folks in the crowd on our SSE journey, which has been nothing short of fun. Prior to working at Cisco, I was a DoD federal contractor for 10+ years, specializing in ICE, NAC, SDA rollouts, things like that. Outside of work, that is my beautiful family there. I do enjoy pizza and hazy IPAs, arguably, in my opinion. There's no better combo out there. And yeah, something I live on from a motto perspective is just glass half full, always try to chisel, chip away, and make an impact whatever you do. So that's me in a nutshell. I'll give it over to Joe.
All right, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Hopefully everybody's having a good week this week at Cisco Live. I know I am. My name is Joe DeSanto. I've been with Cisco a little over 19 years. I started in the data center doing a lot of storage, networking work, moved over data center architecture. Now I'm doing security within our network engineering and operations center here in IT. I do like, on the personal side, I do like a little bit of golf, and I do enjoy pizza and beer, but I like the West Coast IPAs versus the hazy, so I'm glad I'm out here in San Diego to enjoy that. But we're not here to talk about beer and pizza. We're here to talk about our journey with SSE and how we're going along that journey. But before we get into this, how many people, quick raise of hands, are familiar with Cisco's SSE Secure Access? Okay, good, a little over half. How many people are actively deploying Secure Access? All right, just a few. So this will be a good lesson for everybody on how to approach the journey. All right, so we have a very large enterprise. So we have around 120,000 plus users, thousands of network and security appliances. We have campuses, we have branches, we have people working from home, offices, we have lab networks. We also we do acquisitions on seems like quarterly basis. And we have to connect them securely and efficiently as possible. So basically connecting to private cloud, SaaS applications, IaaS providers, and general internet. And so what we did was we built some, I guess we'll call them hubs in strategic locations throughout the globe. 12 locations to be exact. Mike will actually get into what that footprint looks like. But basically we stitched network and security services within those quote unquote hubs in colo facilities. And these were strategically located in colos next to the big cloud providers and our large campuses and branches. So we accomplished that goal to build that connectivity, that's secure and efficient connectivity. But when it came time to do fleeting, we had to fleet the hardware. We had to, upgrade patches and et cetera. It came very, very tedious to do. We are very proud of what we built, and we'll continue to use it for certain use cases. But it became very cumbersome to manage from a large network enterprise such as us. And so we were really excited when Cisco said, hey, we've got this product that has the best of breed products and solutions in a cloud delivered as a service model. So we started that transition probably about 18 months ago to move over to this as a service. And so what this will give us is some benefits that I'll talk to later. And so speaking of challenges, kind of getting into the whys, why we're doing this. So so users are frustrated, right? So a user sits down and says, I need to get to app XYZ. Does he need to be on the VPN? If he's at the office, can he reach it, et cetera? So there's some user frustration there. And because we have all these products that are stitched together, there's a lot of IT overhead that goes with that. And then because all these products are stitched together, there's a lot of fragmented security gaps. Because we're getting all this telemetry from all these different devices, we got to figure out if there's that event correlation. And then because we're doing all this work, we sacrifice user experience. So we're trying to move away from some of these challenges. And because, again, of all these boxes, there's a lot of toil going on with our IT department on how to manage these. So we bring in Cisco Secure Access. So this is Cisco's version of SSE. And basically what this does, again, it brings those best-of-breed solutions in an as-a-service model. So you could see in the center there where it has all of those network and services components, network and security services components. So you have the firewall, you've got secure web gateway, you've got DNS protection, et cetera. And then the users are on the left and the applications are on the right. So this allows us to just use this service, and we'll get into how easy this is to consume. But basically, it provides us the ability to connect users anywhere to applications anywhere. So again, connecting everything on the left to everything on the right. So why are we doing this? So we don't want to manage boxes anymore. We just want to leverage an as-a-service model. And that agility, and we'll show you guys how easy this is to spin up these different services that we're working towards. And that predictable cost model, because this is a license-based model, we're able to forecast that cost year over year. So, we have a pretty steady idea of what that's going to look like year over year. And then from a security perspective, because it's one solution, all those services are in one as-a-service solution. We reduce those numbers of stitching boxes together. And again, we'll see how easy this is to configure, but we get these new capabilities. So along this journey, we've been asking for new features and product updates. It just happens the security business group can deliver these without us even knowing. So next time we log in, we see new features delivered all the time. And then we can't sacrifice that user experience. So because this is deployed very many regions throughout the globe, we're able to bring users closer to applications. And the ultimate goal is that same experience wherever you are. So if you're in an office, you're in a Starbucks, hotel, whatever. So we want that same consistent everywhere. We want users to just sit down and work without having to worry about how to connect to something. With that, Mike's going to take us through how we're actually getting there.
Sweet. Thank you, Joe. So now we've talked about what Secure Access is, why we're doing it. Let's actually buckle in and get inside our journey. So Joe and I thought it would be good just to do a couple quick slides here. Not going to spend a ton of time, but basically just to kind of set the tone or set the stage, and you'll see where we're going with this here shortly. But this is Cisco IT by the numbers, so obviously we're a massive, large enterprise. Folks like myself, Joe, and many others are responsible for managing this large enterprise network. So again, Cisco by the numbers. And then the Cloud Port Hub infrastructure. This is what our regional or our global footprint looks like, excuse me. Again, just to kind of reiterate how large the enterprise network actually is, right? And the point that I'm trying to make here is that SSE is not a sprint, it is a journey. It does take time, and you'll see how we're gonna break that down here in the coming slides. So our adoption strategy, pretty straightforward. So call it several quarters ago, maybe 16 to 18 months, we sat down with leadership to figure out how we could actually approach transitioning services to secure access and consuming everything as a service via that model. And it's something simple that I think we can all relate to, right, at high level. It's basically you need to be able to crawl before you can walk, and you have to walk before you can run, right? Sounds pretty simple and easy. We will deep dive all of these here shortly. But track one, that crawling phase in life, VPN first for two reasons. One, we had a tech refresh opportunity, so aging infrastructure that was end of life that needed to be decommissioned. And then two, maturity. VPN being a more mature service that is offered through secure access, we said, okay, let's focus on transitioning all our VPN services to secure access first. And then shortly after, or in parallel, focus on track two. I say proxies in the sky. Yes, that's plural. Not only the ZTNA proxy, migrating applications from DNG to secure access and enabling zero trust and all that hot stuff in the industry, but also leveraging the secure web gateway. And you'll see how we do that today for this track. To obtain GenAI app visibility and see what Mike is doing on a daily basis in terms of consuming GenAI applications. So really cool stuff. And we're tagging these two tracks, right? The crawling and the walking phase is essentially the transition period. And then ultimately, once we accomplish and migrate and consume secure access for these services that I'm talking to, that's when we'll get to that third and final stage in life, which is we're tagging as the business value, right? The running phase in life, actual driving business value due to centralized unified policy. Joe, who works on RTP, Mike, who works in Maryland 24/7, 365 as a remote worker. I get the same look and feel whether I'm Joe in RTP or Mike in Maryland, which is really cool. And we'll deep dive that in our closing remarks. But high level in terms of what we're doing from an adoption strategy around secure access, in terms of like a leadership or director level, this is how we broke it down. So taking a step further, where are we at today? What are our milestones? What are our accomplishments? I think I speak on behalf of everybody in Cisco IT who's been a part of this journey. We've accomplished a lot. So we said several quarters ago, call it 16, 18 months ago, like I said a minute ago, we basically embarked on this journey, doing small POCs, testing different technologies, trying to obtain and gain confidence, and ultimately establish a strong partnership with the BU and the engineering teams to not only help the business, but also help us trying to actually consume secure access, not only internally as a customer, but also externally. So to this date, we've got almost 100 enhancements submitted to the BU and the engineering teams to enhance the product, again, not only for Cisco IT, but all of you as well, which is really cool and something that we're super proud of. And then I'll kind of spill the beans here on a lighter note. I'm going to talk about this next, that first crawling phase VPN. We've got the entire workforce enabled to consume VPN through secure access, and we're going to show you how we did that. And then lastly, if you quickly just take a look at the bottom of this slide, it kind of gives you insight into the tracks that I just broke down in the adoption strategy and where we stand. So we've done VPN, we've done some DNS stuff around GenAI that Joe will talk to. And then we have stuff around GenAI with SWG, the ZTA stuff in flight, and then there's some future stuff that we're looking into as well. So really proud on behalf of Cisco IT of how much we've accomplished to this point. So let's get into it. Let's take a deep dive here. VPN, right? So you'll see a common theme and format of how we're breaking down each, I guess, track or phase, if you will. So a lot of people in Cisco always take the term, what is it, eating your own dog food? I like to call it practicing what you preach, right? So this is the small POC errors. We're talking tens, maybe hundreds. Ultimately trying to help the business. This is private preview, pre-GA days. And ultimately for us as a customer as well, right, just like you, we wanted to test the solution as a whole and gain confidence to see if we could actually consume services for enterprise scale. That shortly transitioned, probably a quarter or two later, into expanding the audience. So now we're going from tens, hundreds of users to call it thousands or tens of thousands, and targeting specific groups for different user profile to obtain and garner feedback, right? To, again, continue growing confidence and things of that nature. So Ultimately, the goal that I kind of alluded to a couple slides ago is that we want to decommission the tech refresh stuff, right? The aging infrastructure that we have that hosts production VPN services. But again, to reiterate what I made when I said spill the beans and called out on the last slide, today we have the entire workforce consuming secure access for VPN, which is really cool.
Did you guys copy the same profiles, VPN profiles that you had, and decopy that into the cloud? You modified it?
We modified a little bit around tunnel policy and strategy there. We can deep dive that in the Q&A if just for sake of time, we want to keep going. But you'll see, so we have some operator lens slides, if you will, around configuration and what we've done. So we'll talk to that here shortly. Good question, thank you. So taking a step further, so we talked about our adoption strategy. We talked, hey, let's crawl first. Let's do VPN for the two purposes that I called out, maturity and aging infrastructure. This is what our global footprint looks like today from a SSE or secure access provisioning perspective. So today we have 10 regions globally, giving us a global footprint. Our ultimate goal is likely to get to 12 to 15 regions. A couple cool things here to call out for SIA flows or secure internet access, Mike's VPN client to a trusted SaaS app or Mike's VPN client to google.com. We no longer have to backhaul that traffic, so you get that centralized, unified policy that secure access offers. And whatever, when Mike works from Maryland and I connect to the US East POP, I traverse those components within US East and I egress there locally, which is really cool. And then from an SPA perspective, which is secure private access, so just think Mike's VPN client to Cisco private resource. From each provision region, we have dedicated backhauls that allow us to establish that enterprise to SSE connectivity, which I'll talk to you here in the next slide a little bit deeper about how we do that. So really cool stuff here, but this is where we currently stand today, and the teams are actively working on provisioning additional regions to expand the footprint. So the next slide, SSE to enterprise connectivity. It's a little bit deeper, still kind of a bird's eye view here. So Joe had touched on the cloud port hub and infrastructures. We're basically relying on those to integrate the enterprise. What we have in each region, we have dedicated backhauls. These are 2x2 tunnels with ECMP across the tunnels, all managed through Catalyst SD-WAN devices. You probably noticed on the last slide, the backhauls were tagged as Catalyst SD-WAN. These tunnels are just managed through vManage, native IPsec tunnels that essentially allow us to establish BGP peering with SSE to pump routes in, and then, air quote, on the adoption slide, rely on that router in the sky to intelligently pump or route traffic to the enterprise when Mike needs to connect to a Cisco resource. So high level, this is what it looks like in every single region. We do have resiliency because those tunnels terminate in different DCs that reside in different AZs from a secure access perspective. So all really cool stuff. But this is how we do it. This is how we take that large enterprise that I spoke to a few slides ago and integrate it with secure access. So this next slide, packet flow. Joe and I thought it would be a good idea to put something together to kind of talk to, one, the onboarding. So what does it look like when we actually take a traditional or legacy VPN service and then migrate our users, which Joe will talk to the UX here shortly. How do they onboard? And then we thought it would be a good idea to talk to some of the main key players or key components that can influence or enforce your connections or your packets that traverse SSE, wherever you latch onto from a VPN perspective. So from a VPN onboarding perspective, you can see that first bullet says same as production. Essentially what that means is we're able to leverage existing ICE infrastructure and ICE radius authorization policy and things of that nature, which is a capability for all customers, not just Cisco IT. But we're also, from an authentication perspective, able to rely on identity cert, all passwordless base. I just click connect, I'm able to establish the VPN due to the VPN profile configuration, which I think you were alluding to with that question. And basically integrate and leverage existing, again, infrastructure from an ICE perspective. And then for folks out there that are ICE folks, I don't know, I guess a lot of people talk about trusted device or compliance checks. I like to call it comply to connect, or at least that's what they call it in DoD world where I came from. We're able to leverage all those existing posture policies to actually do those checks before folks are actually granted full authorization to the Cisco network. So again, seamless transition for the end users. Talking about legacy VPN services and how they onboard, and then how we do today in secure access, which is pretty cool. The next one I'm going to talk to you here is the firewall. Firewall as a service, the cloud-delivered firewall, if you will. Layer 3, Layer 4, Layer 7 capable, IDS, IPS, powered via Snort. You have the ability to do policy enforcement based on identities that get provisioned in SSE, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, which is really cool. And then we're also doing some UAT around basically ingesting SGTs. So I authenticate, go through authorization, SGT gets assigned to my session, and you can actually do some manipulation and policy enforcement right there within secure access. So that's currently being tested and in flight by Joe, myself, and others on the team, which is really cool. And then next, the secure web gateway. This is the proxy in the sky. So natively today, In SSE, all TCP/80 and 443 traffic traverses SWG, and all non-web traffic, so things like TCP/22, SSH, TCP/UDP, 3389 RDP, and so on, natively bypasses SWG. What this means is essentially that when you egress SSE, whether it be an SA or SPA flow, you're consuming a different IP address, and I want you to keep note of that because we're going to talk about that further in the lessons learned here at the end. So from SWG enforcement perspective, you can do deep packet inspection, all sorts of cool stuff. They have like a fast path mechanism in terms of like MS365, which Cisco IT does utilize today for our SIA flows. And again, the SIA flows are essentially just your north-south, right? So Mike's VPN client to Trusted SaaS app or MS365 resource for that example. Talus integration for content category blocking, things of that nature, all really cool stuff. And then the last bullet there, and last thing I'll say before I pass it back to Joe, reserved IP functionality, which just means that for SIA flows that egress SSE, again, Mike connected to USEs, I consume a Cisco reserved IP, and it's not shared across other tenants or customers. So cool stuff, a little bit deeper in the weeds. But on that, let's get into the operator stuff.
Question.
Yes?
Is the secure gateway the same one that you use at Umbrella City right now? Or is this was rebuilt?
It's the same, ported over with some new features. Yes, that's correct. That part is different. The secure web gateway got ported over, but there's been some feature enhancements since that, if you're a traditional like Umbrella customer from years ago. Yep.
So the question was, is the secure web gateway the same as Umbrella? Is that,
Well, the components, I think, between this.
okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure it's on the recording.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
One other quick question. The firewall, is that in any way integrated with, like, if you have existing Cisco Secure firewall deployment, or is it going to be its own thing, separate? Or can they be?
so from an as-a-service perspective, different, right? But you have the capability to roll those policies from your traditional or on-prem infrastructure into SSE.
Yep.
And there's tooling around that can help that transition, if you will. Yep. But I think last comment, the engine or the firewall is kind of like a unified policy. I don't know if you had your hand up if you're deploying it or not, but so a little bit different. But we'll get into that here shortly.
Right on. So we talked about IT ease of use here. So just bought my secure access license. I'm ready to deploy a region in SSE. What do I need to do? There's 5 steps, which is amazing. So basically, you give your client IP pools. So when a client connects to SSE, they get an IP address assigned from this block. You pick your region where you want the POP to be. And then you create your VPN profile. So for those who have managed ASAs, this is your tunnel group and group policy component. So basically your client settings, your exclusions, tunnel exclusions, if you will, and then your secure client drop-down name, what you want that name to be when somebody wants to connect to. And your tunnel groups. So Mike talked about the tunnel groups. So these are our IPsec tunnels that are connected to our enterprise. And then step 4 is the identity. So your policy enforcement can be done on identities, which is very cool. So users, groups, et cetera. So what we do is we have an enterprise application in Azure. It syncs with our Active Directory. And through that enterprise application, those identities are synced with SSE. So we apply those identities to policy in the access policy. So we have many different access policy rules, but basically you're setting up your access policy rules after you've done all that previous configuration. So 5 steps, and you basically just configured a VPN for your entire company, which is amazing. So there's where you're simpler for IT. We didn't have to ship any boxes anywhere. We just spun up this right from the cloud. So pretty amazing stuff. So from a UX perspective, we talked about, oh, sorry, go ahead. Conditional, is this related to conditional? No, this is an enterprise application within Azure. So we,
Oh, I see.
So Secure Access has a canned, I forget what they call it, but it's a module within Azure where you can then provision those identities into SSE.
Right. Yep.
Good question, thank you. So as we alluded to earlier, we had many different regions deployed from a cloud port perspective. And within those regions, you had multiple profiles you can connect to. So you had TLS or IPsec. And the drop-down was probably 20 or 30 different selections. So a user would sit down and say, well, where do I need to connect to? Do I need to connect to Richardson? Is Richardson faster? Is RTP faster? Is San Jose faster? They would connect. Sometimes they'd connect to the wrong POP, lead to bad user experience, poor latency, et cetera. And so now what we've done is there's two options. So for those 10 regions that Mike talked about that are deployed, we met with the UX team. So there's a lot of different folks involved in the program. There's one UX team that focuses on what that experience should look like. And we decided on, for the majority of the workforce, they get two profiles, IPsec or TLS. And then the magic of geolocation services, MaxBind and Route 53 will determine where you land based on our provision regions. So that's where some of that UX partnership came from. So we decided to only go with two. Now, there are teams that need regional profiles. We do have that available in our mobile device management platform. So if people do need those, they can get those XMLs to get loaded on their client to connect to a specific region if need be. And then, from a end user experience, again, this is no different from what they had before in terms of connection. So, Mike's Comply to Connect. So we have the ICE posture module. So they click on it. It goes authentic, does the authorization through ICE. And then once you've complied, you're effectively connected. So that user experience was consistent between the old on-prem and SSE. So little shift here from VPN to our second track, which is GenAI and DNS. So this is somewhat of the walking phase. So now we're starting to walk. We've stood up a little bit and we're walking now. Now Cisco recently published a data privacy. What is it called again? The benchmark study. Thank you. And this is an annual report, and this is targeted on, what's industry trends and what are companies challenged with in terms of data privacy. Well, 50% of the companies that replied said AI is a great tool and it's helping our business. However, 64% replied and said, we're worried about sharing or leaking sensitive data from the company. So AI is very powerful, but it comes with significant risk. And so Stowe came to us and said, hey, can SSE help with this? Stowe is our security and trust organization. And so we went to the BU and we said, can Secure Access help with this? And they said, yes, it can. And the way, I'll explain how this actually works, but what we're trying to do is gain that visibility. What are folks trying to access? We're going to block those high-risk GenAI applications and then provide user awareness. So we have a whole campaign around what applications, GenAI applications, are safe to use, what are not safe to use, what you shouldn't use, et cetera. So we wanted to provide that user awareness as well. And then data loss prevention. So SSE Secure Access has DLP built in, so we can inspect documents for specific labels or what have you, built on policy, and we can prevent or monitor and safeguard company intellectual property based on that. So the strategy around that is, so this is the walking phase. So what we had to do first is we had to migrate all of our DNS policy from our corporate DNS into SSE. Not a hard task. But then what we also had to do, we currently use Umbrella for recursive DNS lookups within our on-prem DNS servers. So we shifted those from Umbrella to SSE, for Secure Access. And what that enabled us to do is provide that same user experience, whether you're in the office or you're roaming. We have the same policy built in SSE. So this is a very small proof of concept right now. We submitted probably over 15 some features that would help us along this journey, and then try and gain some confidence with this small POC. Where we are today, we've got probably 50 or so users on this, trying to gain that confidence. We're trying to get some different user profiles in there, so IT, engineering, sales, marketing, what have you, so we can gain insights into how well this is working, and then continue that testing. So we also have those different modules, right? So we talked about the VPN module, the ICE posture module. Now we're leveraging the Umbrella module with SWG. So how do all these modules play together with all these different things we're doing in SSE or Secure Access? So ultimately, we want to gain insights into what people are doing in terms of GenAI, informing these users of our corporate policy, and then ultimately protect our intellectual property. That's the ultimate goal. So how does this actually look? So we're using Cisco Secure Client. It requires, I think 518 or later to get this going. But basically, we have this feature called Selective Redirect. And what this is we have specific GenAI applications that are in Secure Access that are fed from CASI Intelligence. That's the Cloud Application Security Index, similar to Talos, but these are focused on GenAI. So these applications are dynamically fed in. We select these particular applications we want to either block altogether, warn, or allow. And so within Secure Access, we have this policy built based on these pre-fed applications, and then we can assign policy. So that experience should be the same whether you're working remote or in the office, because we did migrate those DNS services over, as well as leverage the SWG functionality within the Secure Client. So how this packet flow, this is a little bit different than the previous slide, but basically it's the same kind of format in terms of what does a packet flow look like from the Secure Client. So you take the Umbrella, or the orginfo.json file, which is in Secure Access. We use MDM to put that on the client itself, and then there it downloads the domains that are fed in from CASI that we've already applied into Secure Access, and then that any domains that are selected will be directed to Secure Access, where we can then enforce policy on those particular domains. So we didn't want to send all web traffic to SSE. We only wanted to inspect on GenAI applications. So we can do that policy enforcement. CASI has about 1,200 or so applications defined today. And so we do have to deploy that root certificate on the client so that we can do that full decryption and inspection so we can warn on. And then basically this will help us with this GenAI protection. This is the Umbrella, I'm sorry, the question is, can you use your own certificate? This is the Secure Access root certificate. This provides that trust between the client and the far end endpoint because it is being proxied. And so since we are doing that decryption,
Yeah, but we have a situation where everything already has the company root CA on it. And I just want to know if we could basically upload that and have that use that instead.
That capability is not available today.
deploying
That's
your
a
own
short.
root CA.
Yeah. Nope. Good question.
So, but what we're talking about right now, you as Cisco IT is trying to figure this out. So this might not even become a problem, right?
It may
So-
not become a product. So there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the question.
So what we're testing is the selective redirect feature. Now, the GenAI, those categories exist in Secure Access today, but you have to send all your web traffic to Secure Access and then do policy based on that. We didn't want to send everything. We just wanted to send those specific
GenAI applications.
GenAI applications.
So it's going through UAT, essentially. Well, yeah.
If you're doing umbrella SWG currently, you're already sending everything over.
From an umbrella.
With the umbrella side, obviously, so migrated to SSE.
Yeah, if you're
If
an
you-
umbrella customer and you're already sending all SWD traffic, you're basically, you would take the SSE or the Secure Access JSON and replace it and replicate the same policies.
Which
That's an active feature, that's not the thing.
That's there today.
that's send all and then rely on external domains for exclusions right at the client, essentially, which is there today with Umbrella.
Yep.
Sweet.
So from an operator lens perspective, Mike will show you how to configure it.
Yep. Thank you, Joe. Good questions, by the way. So thank you all. So step one, again, you'll see it for all the tracks, we're going to hammer home kind of the single pane of glass, operator, ease of use, et cetera. But Joe would touch on the org info JSON. That obviously has to be deployed through whatever the solution or thing that you want to use, MDM, SCCM, whatever the case may be, to get the org info JSON file onto the client. Obviously, those clients also have to have the umbrella roaming client module within Secure Client. But that's the first step, basically, to get Mike's roaming client latched onto the SSE org or tenant that we manage. The next step, internet security policy, obviously the DNS stuff that Joe had talked to, plus this whole CASI intelligence feed, enabling the applications that we want to tell the roaming clients or the module to intelligently intercept and then proxy to the nearest SWG instance. That's all done via the internet security policy, which correlates to one of the questions around kind of exclusions. It's in the same area in the controller where you configure that, but pretty straightforward and easy to do via a couple clicks to enable that. Security profiles. This is where you enable your encryption, or decryption, excuse me. And then you can set up custom warn pages, block pages. We actually have an example of what we're doing. We'll show that here in another slide or two. Fourth step, the DLP stuff that Joe talked to, right? If you want to monitor stuff for flags or whatever the case may be in files, you can build that as well. And then ultimately, the SSE policy engine, all of this has to be tied together and then obviously integrated and enabled in the access policy to say, hey, we want to warn when Mike goes to ChatGPT, which we'll talk to here in a second, or we want to block when Joe goes to whatever the case may be, whatever GenAI application Joe is going to protect Cisco sensitive data. And again, just to hammer home some of the benefits, right? Obviously, all of them, operator ease of use, single pane of glass. But from a GenAI perspective, very hot topic in our industry right now. Leveraging this tech track or this solution or this capability will basically give us visibility into who is doing what around GenAI. And obviously, ultimately, the end goal is we want to make sure there's no data leaks or sensitive data getting into AI models out there that are not Cisco approved. So client experience, what does it look like for Mike's workstation or Mike's POV, right? Obviously, the roaming client there, Umbrella, is active once my client obtains that org info JSON file, similar to how they do it in Umbrella today. Then that quickly turns into active or always on and enabled. And you can see my web protection status is set to protected. The feature that we've obviously been talking about today is the selective redirect, which is in UAT that Cisco IT is consuming, right? We don't want to send everything to SWG. We only want to send certain things to SWG. So the example, literally just brought this up, ChatGPT. Obviously, we just walked through the steps of how to configure this, right? So in the steering policy, I go in, I say via that CASI feed, I want to intercept and proxy ChatGPT. I then also configure the decryption via the security profile. and I say, all right, you know what? We want to at least raise some awareness before Mike goes to ChatGPT and potentially puts sensitive data in there, et cetera. This is what I see when I open my browser and type in ChatGPT. The root cert from Secure Access is obviously on my client for that trust, that man in the middle, right? That interception. And again, this a warrant action able to continue through, but at least we're able to provide our end users, if we want, right, for things like ChatGPT, corporate policy heads up, just be like, hey, be aware of what you're actually doing when consuming GenAI. So on that note, pass it back to Joe, and we'll talk about ZTA.
All right, thanks. And we're in the walking phase, very small POCs we're doing, but this is the ultimate goal for us, to provide that seamless user experience. And so what we're doing right now, small scale deployment of ZTA, we have today 200 plus applications that sit behind our Duo Network Gateway. And ultimately, we want to migrate those into Secure Access. We've submitted probably 35 plus ZTA feature requests to enhance the product. And more gaps may come, but we're in the process of identifying those and gain confidence with the solution. Right now, we're in an early adopters pilot. We have probably 1,700 users accessing probably a handful of applications that are sitting behind the Zero Trust proxy. And those users are different. You know, again, we want different feeds from different user groups and communities. So, you know, a finance app, an IT app, a marketing app, et cetera, so we can get different feedback from different users. And then we'll start doing more applications as we gain that confidence. And then ultimately enabling a lot more applications and enabling the workforce for Zero Trust. And then relying less on VPN. So people, when they sit down to work, they don't have to click anything to access a particular application. It'll just be always on for them, and they can work seamlessly. That's the ultimate goal. Question?
So these applications, I'm assuming, are not just web apps, they'd be like Oracle database applications, RDP gateway.
You got it.
Exactly, and
Fully
that's
supported. Yeah.
And that's a good segue here. So this proxy doesn't just support 80 and 443, it's all ports and all protocols. So really cool. So high-level architecture overview. Basically, you connect with the Zero Trust module on Secure Client. I'll go through the workflow here in a second, I think the next slide. But once you're connected to Zero Trust proxy, applications that are defined within Secure Access latch onto that application within the firewall, and we can do firewall policies based on identities and applications, and then continually we can set timers, reauth timers, based on how sensitive a particular application is or what types of controls we want there. There's two methods to connect Secure Access to the enterprise. One is through a resource connector, which is effectively a VM that instantiates a TLS tunnel to Secure Access, or a set of VMs for resiliency purposes, or an IPsec backhaul tunnel to your enterprise. We have Pardon?
In your data center or your enterprise network. Yeah.
Yeah, the VM is a resource connector that provides that secure tunnel from your enterprise to SSE.
That's right.
And so, thank you for the question. And so we decided, we've got all this tooling around our Catalyst SD-WAN devices. All this tooling that we already have in place, we're going to leverage those. So that's why we went with IPsec backhaul tunnels. Now, there might be special use cases if we get an acquisition or we've got applications that live in public cloud that we could just spin up a VM and provide access that way. In the future state, there is a product coming out within Secure Access called Hybrid ZTA. This goes in conjunction with Cisco Security Cloud, and you're able to instantiate firewall policies from Security Cloud to deploy them within Secure Access and on your on-prem firewall. So that would provide, if a user is working from home or sitting in the office, they'll have that same experience. So no need to go out to the cloud if your application is on-prem and you're already sitting on-prem. So leverage that hybrid ZTA feature right in your own firewall. So from a ZTA packet flow, today we're using user password and duo SAML. There is a feature coming out called auto enrollment, but effectively within your secure client module, you click the enroll button, you go through the auth workflow, the client or the certificate gets downloaded to your client, and now you're enrolled in Zero Trust. We are looking at doing cert-based, so we would deploy a cert to the endpoint for that auto enrollment, so users don't have to click. The cert gets deployed and they're auto enrolled. And again, to your question earlier, this doesn't just support 88443, all ports and protocols. And then we can set global app policies. So if we want a sensitive application to have a reauth every so often, we can do that right in the firewall. And then from a policy perspective, per user, per app, policies to get to that particular resource. Mike's going to walk you through how to configure it.
That's right. Thanks, Joe. So the first thing you need to do for enrollment to actually work when I'm on my workstation, and I have the ZTA module, which you need 518 or greater from a secure client perspective, is we actually have to provision the identities within SSE, because if I go to enroll, Mike's not in the SSE tenant that manages all our private applications. From a ZTA perspective, then Mike's not going to be able to enroll. That will fail. Today, Cisco IT, we touched on this a couple of times. We have an AD to Azure Enterprise application, which then gets basically ingested into SSE. Network tunnel groups, the backhaul tunnels, common trend across all the tracks. You have to have that enterprise connectivity, right, for private access in terms of resources and applications, especially for ZTA. Those are those SPA flows that I talked about in the VPN track. And then ultimately within the controller, which we'll show some more stuff here in a second, but you have to enable the applications that you're migrating to SSE to be enabled for Zero Trust and consume that SSE policy. And then via the access policy or the policy engine, you basically tie everything together, right? So Mike's identity that's provisioned via Azure. I have ZTA, the client module. I'm automatically enrolled. Once I do that one-time enrollment, always on, I can actually get to and access private resource A. And then actually to get it is obviously the enrollment. I have to obviously have the ZTA module that I've touched on, the 518 or greater, to do that one-time enrollment, which I'm going to show you here in a second what that looks like. But from a benefit perspective, once you do that one-time enrollment, Joe kind of alluded to this, it's always on, right? So I'm protected no matter where I am. You get that same look and feel, consistent behavior, et cetera. And we're able to do that on a per application basis. So the end user experience, we keep stressing on all the secure client modules for some of these tech tracks, right? You got VPN, now we're introducing ZTA, we've got ICE posture from legacy services. This is what it looks like today. Obviously, Joe had touched on, we're doing auto-enrollment testing and things of that nature. That's in UAT. But for my client, I have to do auto-enrollment one time, and then I'm always on. You can see the module then transitions to being green active. It's pretty simple, straightforward. It's just that one-time enrollment. So operations and support. Before we get to that third and final track of our adoption journey here, obviously transitioning these types of services to the cloud or consuming these services via secure access, there's a transition in how you manage things from an operations and support perspective. So this is how, there's a lot of meat and potatoes on this slide, so I'll try to touch on everything, but this is how Cisco IT is doing it today. And the easy way to consume this slide here is basically just cut it into 3 slices, right? So we've got client to SSE, whether that be VPN or ZTA. That falls on what we have in Cisco IT desktop and VPN teams. Their responsibility or responsibilities, excuse me, is the secure client management, profile management. My clicks connect, I can't consume VPN, right? Those types of things. And then going into the middle slice here, we have a defined SSE team that actually Joe, myself, and some others are on. Our responsibilities are basically to manage the policy engine, the internet security policy for the SWG stuff that we're doing that we talked to and showcased today. We're responsible for that Azure enterprise application ingestion, or user provisioning, I should say. Common issues that we've seen to this point in time. Mike goes to connect. I'm actually not provisioned in SSE, and I can't consume any of the SSE services. That would fall on our team. And then lastly, which is critical again to reiterate, we have to have that enterprise connectivity for secure private access resources, whether it be ZTA or Mike connecting and consuming a VPN service to reach whatever the Cisco resource may be. So all things tunnel-wise and enterprise connectivity falls on our WAN team. And they're responsible for asymmetric routing, tunnel flapping, anything that you can think of in terms of BGP peering, things like that, to actually establish that enterprise connectivity that we've spoken to today. I will say, though, there's definitely been a fundamental shift in how we, Cisco IT, operate, right? So you probably see that bottom part there, one team, one mission. There's a lot of collab effort between all three teams that we're talking to here on the slide. Because it takes all of us, one team, one mission, to actually keep this stuff in flight and obviously operate it and support it from a support model perspective. So again, to summarize, this is how Cisco IT is supporting secure access across these tracks that we've talked to today. So these next couple slides, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on, but we thought it would be a good idea to show the network and security operators in the crowd what the controller actually looks like. I'm sure, based on the raise of hands earlier, some folks already have seen this before. So just real quick, this is what, when Mike logs into the controller as an operator, what I see. Secure access for all these services has easy workflows for you to configure and consume these services that we spoke to today. And if I take that a step further, I'm not going to talk to every single one. This kind of speaks for itself. But this is all these tabs here. You're able to configure the services that we spoke to. So again, high level, you connect it, you secure it, and then ultimately you operate it. But all the magic is done through clicking through these tabs. Another cool call out here, unified activity logging. This is a good one. So for the security operators in the crowd, Mike no longer has to log into multiple products to stitch together or do investigation. We have centralized logging, 5-tuple net flow from all the components within SSE that we've talked to today. So DNS, ZTA, the firewall component, and so on, which is really cool because, again, we get that attribution directly from secure access or the controller. And honestly, to take that a step further, for any of our Splunk customers in the crowd, maybe a little bit deeper level here, we're able to offload all of the logging stuff that we get from secure access for each component, for the security operator or network operator to do debugging and troubleshooting when somebody gets a ticket or an incident and there's an issue. We're able to offload everything into an S3 bucket and then ultimately ingest all of that into Splunk indexes for proactive automation tooling, whatever you have to do, even from a reactive perspective if there's an investigation that needs to occur. So this is what we do today. We offload everything that I just spoke to from the controller into the S3 bucket and then ultimately into Splunk indexes for tooling and things of that nature, which is really cool stuff. So lessons learned and next steps here in closing remarks before Q&A. Lessons learned. SWG today doesn't support QUIC or HTTP3, so that was something that we learned earlier in the game, so just a heads up there. That natively bypasses SWG. We actually choose to block it in Cisco IT at the firewall component. I did call out, I'm going to jog everybody's memory, in the VPN packet flow slide. I said, hey, all TCP/80 and 443 packets traverse SWG natively in SSE. And there was a component that I called out in SWG called reserved IP. Today, non-web traffic that egresses SSE through the firewall uses a different IP range, which is totally different than when we consume a reserved IP from SWG. So that was a lesson learned and something to be aware of. There are features that are currently being worked on to be delivered so that you can have that reserved IP, so I know what I'm consuming when my connections traverse the firewall and egress SSE. But that is a work in progress. And the biggest hurdle, I think, I definitely speak for all of us, Joe, updating far-end application ACLs so that when you consume SSE services and you consume the IP addresses and all that stuff, when you egress SSE that I'm talking to now, are in the allow list or the updated the ACL, no matter where you are in your journey, just food for thought. If you can, try to get ahead of that because we still face that challenge today where we get incidents and cases and people are like, hey, I'm consuming this really cool new SSE VPN service, but I can't access my application. And we're like, well, here you go. Here's a knowledge base article that just tells you basically what to do in terms of updating your FAR and ACL. So food for thought, but that's been our biggest hurdle. And then the last couple comments here before we get into closing remarks. This is a tip. Definitely get yourself a good program manager. We have a rock star. She's actually here in the crowd to help around just managing the entire journey, all the tech tracks. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. We do a lot of email announcements. We do user surveys. Definitely suggest and recommend doing that. So as you're doing your pilots or POCs, you're obtaining feedback from your users about how they feel in terms of consuming traditional services to now cloud as a service stuff. And then lastly, I spoke to this in the demarcation slide and how Cisco IT is approaching that, but there's been a fundamental shift, basically how we operate on a daily basis. There's a lot more collaboration, I should say, and I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, these are our biggest lessons learned to this point. On that, I'll kick it back to Joe.
All right. Thanks. So what's next? Now we're ready to sprint or run. But in order to get there, we have to finish up some things. We're going to continue scaling VPN. We need to retire our on-prem infrastructure, on-prem VPN infrastructure. And it's taking some time, but we're getting there. But that's the ultimate goal, retire VPN, 100% use SSE, Secure Access exclusively for VPN services. And we do want, I keep pounding on user experience. We do want to get to that ultimate user experience. So users don't have to worry about where they need to connect, what to connect to, et cetera. And, so deliver that consistent security vision and controls. So, we do have that policy. That unified policy, and we are feeding those into our Splunk or our S3 bucket and then Splunk. But we're in the process of building tools around those. So we've got tons and tons of data that comes from Secure Access. But we just have to mine it. So we're being a little bit more proactive, easier to investigate any particular breaches or issues that we might face. So continuing that. From a CloudPort perspective, we do have those thousands of devices in CloudPort today. We're looking to de-invest where we can. So moving some of those services, which we already are, VPN services, among other services, to SSE, and kind of shrinking that CloudPort footprint. Excuse me. But there'll be some use cases where we still need some of that CloudPort infrastructure to be there. And then since we are continuous on this journey, we do want to sprint. We're going to start investing in some more cycles within the SSE program team to help us get to that ultimate journey. So hopefully from everything we talked to today, these key takeaways, simplifying that operation. We saw how easy it was to configure VPN, ZTNA, and SWG. With that unified policy within SSE, we are increasing that security. We are centralizing all of those security platforms into one as a service solution. And then that user experience. You could see that where we're trending in that user experience, not having to worry about how to get to my application. From a session evaluation perspective, Mike and I are always looking to get better. So please, if you could, submit your session evaluation. Not only does it help us, you guys can win some prizes. And then we actually there's tons of stuff on Secure Access here from Security Business Group. If you check those out, we are on the showcase floor. We have a couple booths there, so come check us out there if we can't answer your question. And as Mike alluded to, if you have a question that we didn't answer today, please use the application, the WebEx app, to help us out. But thank you very much for coming.
Sweet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.